Hey crew, it's Pitt, and I'm back with some more esoterica. Today we're diving back into the works of Mr. Eliphas Levi. This is Transcendental Magic, its Doctrine and Ritual. We are reading aloud and discussing as we go along the various points brought to light by the text. It is not the format for everyone, but people find value in it, so you are more than welcome to tag along as we continue our exploration. Before we begin, however, if you are unfamiliar with me, any of my unconventional beliefs, or if at any point in time I lose you in the terminology, there will be several playlists linked in the corner above, in the box down below, along with the original source material and the link for my book, so where I teach you to do magic responsibly, so that you can get a better understanding of who I am and why I say the things that I do. With that being said, let us dive in and continue our exploration with, hopefully, 2 chapters of Transcendental Magic, its Doctrine and Ritual, beginning with Part 1, or Part 2, Chapter 19. The Mastery of the Sun. We come now to that number which is attributed in the tarot to the sign of the sun. The denary of Pythagoras and the triad multiplied by itself represent wisdom in its application to the absolute. It is with the absolute, therefore, that we are concerned here. To discover the absolute, the infinite, the indefinite, and the finite, such is the great work of the sages, with that which is termed by Hermes the work of the sun. I will point you to the standalone video, The Divine and the Trinity Explained, if you would like a better explanation of the infinite, the indefinite, and the finite. To find the immovable foundations of true religious faith, of philosophical truth, and of metallic transmutation, this is the whole secret of Hermes. This is the philosophical stone. Now, this stone is both one and manifold. It is decomposed by analysis and recomposed by synthesis. It is, in the analysis, it is a powder, the alchemical powder of projection. Before the analysis and in the synthesis, it is a stone. The philosophical stone, say the masters, must not be exposed to the air, nor to the eyes of the profane. It must be kept in concealment and preserved carefully in the most secret receptacle of the laboratory, the key of the place being always carried upon the person. I'm going to go ahead and interject here, right? I think that the philosophical stone exists, but I do not think that it is a physical thing that you can put your hands upon without some great harm coming about. That is because, to me, the philosophical stone is going to be represented inside your mind, right? It is quite literally your pineal gland, your third eye mechanism, whereby you can activate through the flexion, as I describe in my book, to alter reality, to be able to do the things of the electromagnetic manipulation of the forces of creation, which is the Holy Spirit, the infinite, limited into the finite. You can do that, right? I earnestly and honestly believe it. It is due to balance, getting access to that rod that runs from the crown all the way to the base. And one of the key components of that is contained right here. If you put your fingers just in front of your ear, right? Just like this. And you draw a line between those two. And then you go here between the eyes and back here where the skull comes down kind of in a V. And you draw a line between those 2 points. Where those 2 lines intersect is your third eye. It is the pineal gland. And to me, that is the philosophical stone. That is where you can quite literally transmute bad circumstances into good ones through the transmutation that you do through the electromagnetic forces of creation, which you can manipulate if you've got your rod and your stone. Now, that is completely different from what he's talking about. He is talking about a physical thing that you can hide somewhere. Well, it's hidden. Nobody should expose it to the air. If you do, it is going to be destroyed. That is a thing. No one should see it. It should be kept concealed and preserved in the most secret receptacle in your laboratory. The key of the place being always carried upon the person. He who possesses the great arcanum is truly king, and is above any king, for he is inaccessible to all fears and to all vain hopes. In any malady of soul or body, a single fragment, broken from the precious stone, a single grain of the divine powder, are more than sufficient for their cure. He that hath ears to hear, let him hear, as the Master said. And again, I'm going to point out that this is going to be dealing with what I am talking about. Now, if you are unaware, this might be your first video, but if it is, you got a lot to catch up on. I've healed myself through the direct manipulation of the electromagnetic forces of creation, which is the Holy Spirit. I asked for healing. I received the ability to heal myself. I learned how to do it, and it worked. I've healed my throat, I've healed my shoulder, I've healed my back. I've just about completely healed my leg. These things are great. Like yesterday, I got to cut my grass for the first time. It has not been 3 months since I had surgery on this knee, and they repaired my tibia. They put it on the plate on my bone. I'm doing wonderful. Just saying. I think that it is directly related to what I am doing. Right? The energy that I move is healing me faster than other people. It's simply part of the process. Any malady, soul or body, a single fragment broken from the precious stone. Yes, that precious stone is right here. Salt, sulfur, and the mercuries are the only accessory elements and passive instruments of the great enterprise. That is true as well, but probably not in the way that he is talking about, right? Salt, that's your body. Sulfur, that is your spirit, or the sulfur is the soul. Mercury is the spirit. It is quite literally the representation of logos. Fire and mercury are interchangeable. Sulfur is your thoughts. Salt is the body. They are the only accessories, elements, and passive instruments of the great enterprise, and you have them with you at all times. You carry that key on you at all times. Everything depends, as we have said, upon the interior magnes of Paracelsus. We have not read Paracelsus yet. I will find some works on him soon. The work consists entirely in projection, and projection is accomplished perfectly by the effective and realizable intelligence of a single word. There is but one important operation, and that is sublimation, which is nothing else, according to Geber, but the elevation of the dry substance by means of fire with adherence to its proper vessel. Now, to sublimate something is to put it into something else, right? If you are creating a tincture, you are sublimating the herb into an oil. That is what sublimation is. It's taking the essential element out of the oil or out of the plant and infusing it into the oil, and then you can discard the plant matter. And so that is what sublimation is. It can be done with fire, but it doesn't have to be done with fire. And that's my understanding. I can be wrong. We have not begun practicing alchemy. I haven't even done a deep dive of alchemy yet. Hopefully when we get to Paracelsus, that will be part of it. We do have some grimoires coming, right? We are about to be starting alchemy. Back to the text. He who is desirous of understanding the great word, and of possessing the great arcanum after studying the principles of our doctrine, should read the Hermetic philosophers carefully, and he will doubtless attain initiation, as others have attained it. Hold on. I agree, but this is in contradiction to current understandings, right? Again. So, if you are desirous of understanding the great word and possessing the great arcanum. Now, once again, there is a word. I didn't say that in this video, but we talk about it quite often. There is a word. I cannot give it to you. I don't even know that I have it correctly, but there is a word that I have been given, and it has been used, and it has helped at the very minimum. I can't give it to you because it is a divine revelation, right? It is one of those things that I am, like, there are very few things that I am restricted from giving you, and that is one of them. It is remarkably similar to the sound of magnetics. I will give you that hint. And that particular sound, while not quite a word, is definitely something that you can obtain, and if you obtain it, it does not get passed to you by anyone, right? So if you are desirous of understanding the great word and possessing the great arcanum, now the great arcanum comes from intuition, but that intuition to me is divine revelation, right? The overlay that I do of the 8 chakras with the MBTI system, to me that was a divine revelation. The overlays of the chakras that we do, the way that all of the mechanics of the magic that I work came from divine revelation. That is the great arcanum. Now, part of that is the Akashic records, which you can obtain. I have viewed them, but I couldn't interpret anything, right? It's a big deal for me to say that too, because I cannot willfully imagine anything, right? We talked about that before. I have aphantasia. I can't close my eyes and then intentionally create anything. Like, I can look at these glasses, close my eyes, try to envision glasses, I don't see it. Like, I can do colors now through the meditation healing process that I'm doing, but I still cannot visualize anything in particular. And when I was coming out of my meditation and I was in the oneness state, I saw the records, right? At one time, I haven't been able to go back, but I did see a record. And I wasn't able to abstract anything from it. It was markings that I was completely unfamiliar with. One of the reasons why I am so adamant about the Emerald Tablet of Teote is because we have something that is attributed there, right? But everything that I have seen, right, we haven't seen the Emerald Tablet in real life. We have seen representations, like Billy Carson's a real big one for trying to push up this representation that he completely fabricated out of his ass. What I saw, to my understanding, was this tablet. Not where it was located. I wasn't able to translate it, but I saw it written in hieroglyphics that I was completely unfamiliar with. Less Egyptian, more Sumerian, and more like cuneiform than hieroglyphics. But not quite Sumerian, right? The marks were not the same, then definitely not Egyptian. The marks were definitely not the same. But I saw this thing. Now, that is entirely subjective. That is entirely within my mind, and I'm just pointing it out because that is part of the revelation experience, right? Whether you are getting a divine intuitional experience like I have done with all of the procedures, or whether you are actually seeing something, it is a revelatory experience. No one else is required at all for you to be able to do that. There doesn't have to be a club. You can be initiated completely by yourself. If, like, he who is desirous of understanding the great word and possessing the great arcanum, I would do less studying of this doctrine, do more prayer, fasting, and meditation, probably read the Hermetic philosophers carefully, and you will attain initiation as others have attained it, completely by yourself. That is something that I absolutely emphatically believe. I have no initiations, right? I have been told that I am part of the Order of Melchizedek. It is not a bloodline thing. I know that there are people claiming the bloodline. I was not told that it was part of a bloodline when I was giving the notice that I was part of it, right? I wasn't given any instructions on what to do. It was more of a, you are of the Order of Melchizedek. And that was pretty close to the entirety of it. It wasn't the entirety, but it's pretty close. That was the summary. And so I haven't been initiated into the Masons or the Illuminati or the Skull and Bones or any of those clubs. I hold them in a great deal of disdain, as a matter of fact, because, for instance, according to G.S.R. Mead, the Masons perform ceremonial magic without any belief in the ceremonial magic, which I find to be completely fucking stupid. Right? If you are doing things and you don't have an understanding of them, it is dumb. Right? You don't play with a gun. You don't play with nuclear power. If you don't know what you're doing, don't do it. All of that to say, you don't have to have anyone else involved. I am over here completely solitarily operating. There is no one else involved. Except for the crew, and that is only kind of tangentially. Right? There's a couple of you who make meaningful contributions, but for the most part, people are just watching, and that is fine. Right? I'm here to learn, but I am here to help as well. So, back to the text. But for the key of their allegories, he must take the one dogma of Hermes, contained in the Emerald Table, and to classify the knowledge and direct the operation, he must follow the order indicated in the Kabbalistic alphabet of the Tarot, of which an absolute and complete explanation will be given in the last chapter of this work. And again, I don't believe that the Emerald Tablet that is attributed to Hermes, we have done the works, right? We have done several of the works of Hermes Trismegistus. What was supposed to be the contents of the Emerald Tablet is part of that, and while there is definitely some wisdom to be extracted, it is not necessarily correct. And on top of that, there is no tablet that we can place our hands upon. The exact same problem that we have with Joseph Smith and the Mormons, right? If there are these golden tablets inscribed by God with the divine word, so that you can know exactly how you were supposed to do, why would you take them back? Right? Why would you give them to this guy to interpret, and then they go away, and then he interprets them again in a slightly different way, but you don't have the originals? Yeah, you made that shit up, right? Same thing. It's nice to be able to say, I got this from the Emerald Tablet of Hermes. That's a little bit prideful. If we had the actual Emerald Tablet, that would be a whole different thing, right? It's not like it just disintegrated. It didn't catch on fire and go away, right? It didn't just rot. It's out there somewhere as if it exists, and we've never seen it. It may be that one of them groups has it, by the way, right? Probably the Catholics. All right, back to the text. Among the rare and priceless treatises which contain the mysteries of the Great Arcanum, the chemical pathway or manual of Paracelsus must be placed in the first rank as comprising all the mysteries of demonstrative physics and the most secret Kabbalah. Let's do this. I'm going to pop this out so I can add it to the list. We will be right back. This unique manuscript is preserved in the Vatican Library. I'll bet that tablet's down there too. There's all kinds of things that you do not get to see, right? Not the Smithsonian, although that's a different one, right? The Vatican has a vast network of underground tunnels, caverns, and security systems to protect a vast amount of treasures that no one is allowed to see. Some of those are absolutely religious icons from other beliefs and possibly contain things like the original Stone of Hermes. Now, that is entirely speculative that the Stone of Hermes is there, but there is no reason to doubt whatsoever that the rest of that is true. Right? We have sufficient corresponding evidence to believe that the Vatican has, on several occasions, taken knowledge and hidden it from people in their library. A copy was transcribed by Sindavigilus, who was used by Baron Schutte when composing the Hermetic Catechism contained in his work entitled The Blazing Star. I'm going to put that on the list as well. So let's go ahead. What did I just do? Oh, okay. This catechism, which we point out to instructed Kabbalists as a substitute for the incomparable treatise of Paracelsus, expounds all the essential principles of the great work in a form so clear and complete that a person must be absolutely wanting in the quality of occult understanding if he fail in attaining the absolute truth by its study. We will definitely be checking that out. Now, that is with the caveat that Mr. Levi had no idea what he was talking about, right? He is saying that you will find the absolute truth by its study, but we have found not any absolute truth contained in this doctrine, right? There have been a few kernels of truth, but for the most part, this book has been subjective, has been, what's a good way of putting it? Written with the goal in mind, right? The goal in mind is not enlightenment. The goal in mind was obfuscation, to muddy the waters rather than clarify them. Many of the things that we have seen in here and we have remarked upon have been intentionally misleading, intentionally prohibitive, and unnecessary. And so take it with a grain of salt whether you can find the absolute truth in its study. I believe that it is possible, even if Mr. Levi did not attain it. We shall now give a succinct analysis of this work, together with a few words by way of commentary. Raymond Lully, one of the grand and sublime masters of science, says that before we can make gold, we must have gold. Out of nothing, we can make nothing. Wealth is not absolutely created, it is increased and multiplied. Hence, let aspirants to knowledge understand thoroughly that neither miracles nor juggler's feet are required of the adept. Hermetic science, like all real sciences, is mathematically demonstrable. Even its material results are as exact as a well-worked equation. Hermetic gold is not only a true doctrine, a shadowless light, truth unalloyed with falsehood. Alright, so there is no such thing as a shadowless light. Right? If there is no shadow, light is irrelevant. That is the simplest way to put it. It is also material, actual, pure gold, the most precious which can be found in the veins of the earth, but the living gold. Living sulfur, or true fire of the philosopher, must be sought in the house of the mercury. This fire feeds on air. To express its attractive and expansive power, a better comparison is impossible than that of lightning, which primarily is a dry and terrestrial exhalation united to human vapor, and afterwards, in virtue of its exaltation, assuming an igneous nature, acts on its inherent humidity, which it attracts and transmutes into its own nature, after which it falls rapidly to earth, where it is drawn by a fixed nature similar to its own. You know what lightning is? Like, if you've been following this playlist, you know what I'm about to say, but if you don't, lightning is an expression of the Logos. The Spirit, the infinite God, limited into creation by himself, is the finite spirit. At the moment of that limiting, it becomes the beginning, held in stasis. Every single atom in existence is in existence, but it is not compounded. None of them have bonded. They're not moving, they're not changing, they are just existing in stasis. And then God speaks and he says, I am the light, and light becomes. And then there is shadow at the same time. And so he becomes the light, he speaks, and that is the Logos. That is signified in one way by lightning, in another way by fire. Any instance of light, life, change, heat, motion, thought, anything along those lines, that is the Logos in motion. Therefore, the Logos cannot be a person. The way that it works is all of these elements exist together, right? They seem to be separate, right? You think that oxygen and helium are different. They're just side by side. They're existing together. They are part of the Spirit. They are existing right now all around you. There are various elements all the way around you. They are invisible at the moment. That is inactive plasma. There's no state of change happening. They're just there. You can initiate a state of change by lighting a fire, right? This is a visualization of the Logos. This plasma around us contains potential. What happens during a lightning strike is that potential changes into kinetic energy. It goes from inactive plasma to active plasma. You can't see it, now you can. That is quite literally the visualization of the Logos. That is light. It is also heat. It is also change. That bolt of lightning, when it moves from the clouds to the ground, or from the ground to the cloud, because it does happen both ways, is changing things. That entire course is filled with elements. There's oxygen, nitrogen, helium, all of the things, they're there. And this lightning comes through and it superheats it and it changes it. Some of the vapor, right, you have water elements, hydrogen dioxide or dihydrogen oxide. It's floating around up there. This lightning comes through and it separates them. It makes them into hydrogen and oxygen. separately or forms new compounds. It takes those oxygen and hydrogen that are out there naturally and combines them into moisture and water. That is quite literally a visual representation of the change of logos. There, we explained it fairly simply. Now, I've got a better explanation. It is longer. The Divine and the Trinity Explained goes into a longer explanation of that. These words, enigmatic in form but clear in essence, express openly what the philosophers understand by their mercury fructified by sulfur. That is, internal, becoming the master and regenerator of salt. Again, mercury is the spirit, sulfur is your mind, salt is the body. So, by understanding the spirit and fructifying it by your mind, then you become the master and regenerator of your body. Now, I can't say that you can, but I can say that I did. It is Azoth, universal magnesia, the great magical agent, the astral light, the light of life, fertilized by anemic force, by intellectual energy. When they compare to sulfur on account of its affinities with divine fire. As to salt, it is absolute matter. All that is material contains salt, and all salt can be converted into pure gold by the combined action of sulfur and mercury. This is a little bit, right? Inside of some igneous formations, there is probably not salt. I mean, that's a good way of putting it, right? You can have halite formations on top of basalt, but you probably don't have salt contained in the basalt. That is this in inverse, right? Now, most things contain salt. That is a truth. The elemental plane has salt, but it is not intrinsic to all of the elements. So not all that is material contains salt. The element of hydrogen has no chlorine whatsoever, right? Or hydrogen chloride. So in a way, you're right, because all living things, right, everything from the second plane of existence, at least to the fifth plane of existence, is going to have salt, because without that salt, the incorporeal part, right, that's what transmits the electrical signals in your body, if you didn't know, right? You have electricity in you, you emit electricity, you receive electricity. You have a magnetic field emanating from your heart, from your brain, from your nether regions, right? These are all true. I mean, whether you believe them or not, this is scientifically proven truth, right? These things happen. Now, I believe you can take control of that. That is different. But the way that the electricity moves, like when you make a decision, I want to wiggle my fingers. I use this all the time. You don't wiggle your fingers. You make the decision. You, the sulfur, the soul. You make the decision, I want to wiggle my fingers. This 5D temple, it doesn't do it. What happens is you make the decision and the spirit sends an electrical charge to your fingers and your fingers move. That is the spirit in motion. You breathing, spirit in motion. Your heart beating, spirit in motion. It is quite literally, right? All of that is controlled by salt. If you do not have enough salt, the electrical impulses don't happen, you get a heart attack. If you have too much salt, the electrical impulses override, you have a heart attack. You are driven by salt. You must have salt. It is an intrinsic part of life. It is one of the staples. You must have it. It is your body, right? Without that, there is no moving your fingers. There is no dogs barking. There is no breathing happening without that electrical signal. And so, salt is intrinsic. It is, in fact, absolute matter. Now, does all that is material contain salt? No, some of the elements don't, right? Most of the compounds do have at least trace salt. All salt can be converted into pure gold by the combined action of sulfur and mercury. Now, this, as far as I am aware, is talking about healing, right? When you are converting into pure gold, if you're converting your thoughts into gold, you're taking depression and turning it into normal thoughts. You're taking anxiety and turning it into normal thoughts, right? You're taking away the power from this thing that is trying to rule over you. and you are converting it through mental alchemy. I say all of the time, if you wake up every day and you're like, it's going to be a shitty day, it's going to be a shitty day no matter what happens. But if you wake up every day and you're like, it's going to be a wonderful day, it's going to be a wonderful day, whether or not anybody throws shit at you. Which at times act with such swiftness that transmutation can take place in an instant or an hour, without labor for the operator and almost without expense. At other times, when the tendencies of the atmospheric media are more contrary, the operation requires several days, months, and occasionally even years. Now, if you're talking about physical transmutation of the elements through chemical processes, yeah, right, that appear you can't make pralines if the humidity is too high. The candy simply won't form, right? The environmental conditions do play on the mortal plane. Now, if you are talking about mental alchemy, no, right? It can take that long, but if you are an operator using mental alchemy in the correct manner, it is pretty close to instantaneous, right? When I broke my leg, it was pretty close to instantaneous that I was looking for the good side of it. And that is not being prideful, just relaying what happened. And other people noted it, right? People are like, I cannot believe you're responding to this in this manner. It is so not who I used to be. All right. As we have already said, there are 2 primary natural laws. There are 8 laws of creation. 2 essential laws which, balanced one against another, produce the universal equilibrium of things. That is one of the laws. These are fixity and motion. Analogous to truth and discovery in philosophy. And in the absolute conception to necessity and liberty, which are the very essence of God. The Hermetic philosophers give the name of fixed to all which is ponderable, to all which tends by its nature to central rest and immobility. Whatsoever obeys more naturally and readily the law of motion, they term volatile, and they compose their stone by analysis, that is, the volatilization of the fixed. Then, by synthesis, that is, the fixation of the volatile, which they operate by applying to the fixed, directed and rendered omnipotent by a secret operation. Applying to the fixed, I missed a line, called their salt, sulfurated mercury or light of life, directed and rendered omnipotent by a secret operation. They possess themselves, we've already discussed this, so I'm not going to hit it again. They possess themselves in this manner of all nature, and their stone is found wherever there is salt, which is equivalent to saying that no substance is foreign to the great work, and that even the most apparently contemptible and vile matters can be changed into gold, which is true in this sense, as we have said, that all contain the fundamental salt, represented in our emblems by the cubic stone itself. That's funny, salt is not a cube. As they may be seen in this, I'm pretty sure it is hexagonal. As may be seen in the symbolic and universal frontispiece of the keys of Basil Valentine. To know how to extract from all matter the pure salt which is concealed in it is to possess the secret of the stone. It is, therefore, a saline stone, which the odd or universal astral light decomposes and recomposes. It is one and many, for like ordinary salt, it can be dissolved and incorporated with other substances. Obtained by analysis, it may be termed the universal sublimate. Recovered by the synthetic way, it is the veritable panacea of the ancients, for it cures all diseases, whether of soul or body, and is termed, in an eminent manner, the medicine of all nature. When by means of absolute initiation, we can dispose of the forces of the universal agent, this stone is always to our hand, for its extraction is then a simple and easy operation, far different from projection or metallic realization. The stone, in its sublimated state, must not be exposed to the air, which might dissolve it and spoil its virtue. Moreover, To inhale its exhalations is not devoid of danger. The wise man more readily conserves it in its natural envelopes, knowing that he can extract it by a single effort of his will, and a single application of the universal agent to the envelopes, which the Kabbalists term shells. To express hieroglyphically this law of prudence, the sages of Egypt ascribed to their Mercury, personified as Hermanubis, a dog's head, and to their sulfur, represented by the Baphomet of the temple, or Prince of the Sabbath, the goat's head, which brought much odium upon the occult associations of the Middle Ages. For the mineral work, the first matter is exclusively mineral, but it is not metal. It is metallized salt. This matter is called vegetable because it resembles a fruit and animal. Because it produces a kind of milk and blood. It alone contains the fire by which it must be dissolved. Alright, so that's going to be the end of that chapter. We have time. I'm going to go ahead and drop into the Thaumaturge, which is chapter 20. We've already talked enough about 19. So we have defined miracles as the natural effects, the Thaumaturge. We have defined miracles as the natural effects of exceptional causes. The immediate action of the human will upon the body, or at least that action exercised without visible means, constitutes a miracle in the physical order. That is quite literally what I did, right? I call it a miracle. Other people don't have to. I don't care. It is magic, but magic is miracle, right? It is literally the same thing. It's hard to explain to people. Like, I started exercising and my back got better. But when I started exercising for the first 2.5 years, the entire time was a painful process. Right? There was no significant improvement in the pain level. There was significant improvement in my ability to move. I went from half a mile to a mile to 3 miles walking, all with the exact same level of pain. There was no lessening until I embraced this path, until I started doing these things. The things that I talk about in the book and the playlist, working the magic. Once I started doing that, my pain level started lessening. My throat started healing. My shoulder, first it hurt, right? First the fix broke, and then it's fixed. None of the process has been immediate. None of the process has been pain-free or without effort upon my part, right? Even my throat. The cyst is gone, but these videos started out, in part at least, as vocal therapy because I couldn't talk. Now, I can talk here. I can talk here. I can talk here. I can vary my tone as much as I want. It's amazing. I could not do that. I had a cyst pushing against my vocal cords. I got to the point where I could talk up here for a long period of time. But when I started this, it was 10 to 15 minutes and my voice was dead. I had to let it rest. There was no way I could talk to you for 38 minutes in my projection tone of voice, which is what I'm doing now, right? This is my normal tone of voice. I'm still building stamina right here because I don't use it that much. This is my projection voice. This is so that I can be heard over there. A year ago, I think it's about a year now, maybe a year and a half by this point, 10 feet over there, you could not hear me talk, right? You could hear me on the microphone because I can play with the gain, but they could not hear me, anybody, 10 feet away a year and a half ago at all, right? I didn't have a projection voice. Talking like this is a miracle, right? It has not been without work. It has not been without pain. It was not instantaneous, but it's a miracle. The cyst went away like that. Working the vocal cords back into where they're at now has been a process. The pain relief, when I embraced this, I went from waking up at a 7, at least, every single day on the pain scale. I woke up and it's like, oh, fuck. Right? I don't have that anymore. My back doesn't hurt unless I do stupid things. Right? That doesn't mean that it's 100% healed. It can be. I don't know. I'm not going to pay for an MRI just to check. But I can do things that I couldn't do before. I have stamina. That pain didn't go away until I embraced this path. And then it was gone. The process is still there. I'm still doing the core exercisings. Well, I will be as soon as my leg allows me to walk again. Right? I can walk a little bit. I cut my grass yesterday. It let me know I was done by the end of it, but I did it. All of that to say, I have performed what would be considered miracles, right, on myself. You can take it subjective. I don't care. You can dismiss me completely as irrational. I don't care. I have the effect. I can talk. I can walk. I can throw a baseball. I haven't been able to throw a baseball in 20 years. I can do that now, right? I can bend over and pick up things. I couldn't do that. I can walk. I was running. I was running before I broke my leg. I was running with a bad back. Like, it's not just a little bit of a bad back. I had 13 discs, 7 bulges, 6 herniations, 3 spinal impingements, and I am fine. I don't have pain. Take it what you want. Back to the text. The influence exercised upon wills or intelligences, either suddenly or within a given time, and capable of subjugating thoughts, changing the most determined resolutions, paralyzing the most violent passions. This influence constitutes a miracle in the moral order. The common error concerning miracles is to regard them as effects without causes, contradictions of nature, sudden vagaries of the divine mind, not seeing that a single miracle of this class would destroy the universal harmony and reduce the universe to chaos. One of the 8 laws of creation is that energy cannot be created nor destroyed, merely transformed. Sounds an awful lot like physics. It is really close. Nothing comes from nothing. There has to be a source for everything. There are miracles which are impossible, even for God, namely, those which involve absurdity. Could God be absurd for one instant? Neither himself nor the world would be in existence the moment following. That is you assuming things, right? This is an anthropomorphization that we are placing upon God. You don't know this. I don't know this. Nobody knows this. I believe in God emphatically. I do not believe in Sky Daddy sitting on a throne waiting to throw you into a lake of fire. See the Bible study if that is unclear to you, because there are great reasons to believe what I believe. There are less reasons to believe what is contained in that book. This is placing upon the infinite, who has already limited himself into everything that you ever see, ever. You're assigning attributes to him which may not apply, right? I call God he because it is the common vernacular. Everybody is used to it. God is maybe a man, may not be a man, maybe something beyond manhood. We may be created in the image of God. We may not be created in the image of God. We do not know. We assume that because we are who we are, that we are the epitome of existence, and therefore God must be like us. But if you look at our actions, back to the text. To expect from the divine arbiter an effect having a disproportionate cause, or even no cause at all, is what is called tempting God. It is casting oneself into the void. God operates by his works, in heaven by angels and on earth by men. Hence, in the circle of angelic attraction, the angels can perform all that is possible for God. That is, again, something that you are assuming. And in the human circle of action, men can dispose equally of divine omnipotence. In the heaven of human conceptions, it is humanity which creates God, and men think that God has made them in his image because they have made him in theirs. That is what I just explained, right? The anthropomorphication which he is doing right up here. The domain of man is all corporeal and visible nature on earth, and if he cannot rule sun and stars, he can at least calculate their motion, compute their distances, and identify his will with their influence. He can modify the atmosphere. That they are doing. And if you are unaware, that is a thing. It's not causing the floods, but they are definitely cloud seeding. And here's another thing that's just absolutely going to set off somebody. If you can see it in the sky, it is not the chemtrails. Right? That is condensation. If you can see it, it's condensation. It doesn't matter how long it sticks around. The winds are varying and the atmospheric conditions change. If you can see it, it is water vapor. If they are seeding, you don't see it. There is nothing to see. It is microscopic particles dispersed over a wide field with very little refractive value. If any light is hitting it, is reflecting in the opposite direction, not back towards you. It can obscure slightly, but for the most part, it is completely invisible. And if you are seeing it, it's not a contrail, or it's not a chemtrail, it's a contrail. And those are different things. Yes, we have more of them these days. You want to know why? Because we have better jet engines, and they are more prevalent in use than they used to be. And so, instead of being wasteful, they give us more exhaust, which forms those clouds in the correct atmospheric conditions. So, once again, they are doing weather manipulation, both by cloud seeding and by directed energy weapons, in my estimation, in a pure speculative fashion. And neither one of those things you can see. All right, where are we at? Act up to a certain point on the seasons, heal or harm his neighbors, preserve life and inflict death. The conservation of life, including resurrection in certain cases, is already established. The absolute, in reason and volition, is the greatest power which can be given any man to attain, and it is by means of this power that he performs what astonishes the multitude under the name of miracles. The most perfect purity of intention is indispensable to the thaumaturge, and in the next place, a favorable current and unlimited confidence. A man who has come to fear nothing and desire nothing is master of all. This is the meaning of that beautiful allegory of the gospel, wherein the Son of God, thrice victor over the unclean spirit, is ministered unto by angels in the wilderness. Nothing on earth withstands a free and rational will. When the wise man says, I will, it is God himself who wills, and all that he commands takes place. It is the knowledge of the physician and the confidence placed in him which constitute the virtue of his prescriptions, and thaumaturgy is the only real and efficacious remedy. Hence, occult therapeutics are apart from all vulgar medication. It chiefly makes use of words and insufflations, and communicates by will a various virtue to the simplest substances: water, oil, wine, camphor, salt. The water of homeopathists is a truly magnetized and enchanted water, which works by means of faith. Here we get to talk about science, because this is something we have tracked. This is something we have traced. This is something that is repeatable. You can charge water. This is a true thing. If you take and you direct positive energy towards water and then you freeze it, it forms a crystalline structure in one manner. If you direct negative energy at the water and you freeze it, it forms a different crystalline pattern. This is not just something that happened once. This is something that has been experimented with vastly. A lot of people have spent a lot of time on this, and the results are all in concurrence. You can absolutely charge water, positively and negatively. By extrapolation from that, all things are analogy, according to the Book of Hermes, right? You can do that with other things as well. Oil, wine, camphor, salt. Now, oil and wine contain water. That is that is why they move, right? It can be a bound water in the case of oil. It can be a less bound in the case of wine, but both of them use a water base. And so it is entirely within the realm of speculation that you can do those two. Camphor and salt are more material, but it is entirely possible you can charge those as well. It is entirely possible that you can charge wood, like a wand maybe, or a stone. Now, Those things have no power on their own. You can, however, use the intrinsic foci, right? They are lenses. Stones are a really good one for this. If you have a rose quartz, for instance, quartz is about midway. I think it's around level 5, maybe around level 4 on the perfection scale. See the minerals video. And therefore, the focus is, I believe, in the heart area. I believe it's a 4. So if you focus your energy through the rose quartz, it automatically tunes that energy to the correct frequency for the associated chakra. That, I believe, is the heart, right? I don't play with stones a whole lot. I've got a couple of them that I play with, but for the most part, I do the things without the tools. It does nothing on its own, but if you direct the energy through it, it's like placing a light filter over a light. Like if you have a piece of red glass and you place it over your light, it will shine red. Or if you have an orange one, it'll shine orange, or a blue one, it'll shine blue. That's what the stones do. They refract the energy into the one particular frequency. The same is true with the rods and the wands and all of the other tools, right? They have a frequency that they attune to naturally, but you have to feed them the energy in order for them to do it. And so this is, in my opinion, true. The dynamic substances added in, so to speak, infinitesimal quantities are consecrations and signs of the physician's will. What is vulgarly called charlatanism is a great means of real success in medicine, assuming that it is sufficiently skillful to inspire great confidence and to form a circle of faith. Now, one thing to pay attention to here is the placebo effect. This is a real thing as well, right? If you are convinced that this thing will help, it can help. It has happened with serious diseases. What happens is they do a double-blind study. They get a whole group of people who have a particular a thing, right? We'll say cancer, right? This is completely just pulling it out of my ass. And so they feed this group a medication, and then they feed this group a sugar pill. But they tell them that it's the medication. Neither one of them knows whether they get the real medication or not. They're all being told they're getting the real medication. So they've got it in their mind. I'm getting this medicine. And the medicine helps them. Their cancer recedes or goes into remission or even disappears completely. But it was sugar. They were taking sugar pills. It is entirely contained within their mind. That is not to say that there are not medicines that actually do things for you. If you're running a fever and you take aspirin, it's going to help, or Tylenol or whatever, right? It's going to help break the fever. Real medicine has real effects, but some things are psychosomatic, which means that they exist in your mind. Some things can be cured simply by your mind. The placebo effect is the exemplar of that, right? This is, again, something that is not just an arbitrary thing. It has been extensively experimented upon and holds to concurrence. Now, it is so much a thing that when they are doing clinical trials, they adjust for the placebo effect. They take their results and they subtract part of it just because the placebo effect is a real thing. Good knowledge. In medicine, above all, it is faith which saves. And that is in part true too. I say in part, but it is definitely intrinsic. Say you are going for surgery and you are convinced that you are not going to make it out of the surgery. You're not going to make it out of the surgery. But if you go in and you say everything's going to be fine, chances are everything is going to be fine. That is feeding into reality with your mind, and that is faith. It does indeed help. There is more of a concurrence. Now, this is entirely subjective, but there is more of a concurrence that positive going in has better effects than a negative going in. So if you are going in with a negative attitude, you're probably not going to like the results. There is scarcely a village which does not possess its male or female compounder of occult medicine, and these people are almost everywhere, and invariably more successful incomparably than physicians approved by the faculty. This is less true today, but still somewhat true. There are definitely faith healers out there, and for the most part, they tend to have better results. The remedies they prescribe are often strange or ridiculous, and hence answer all the better, for they are exact and realize more faith on the part of the patients and operators. I've told the story before, but let's hit it again. When I was like 5 or 6 years old, I had a case of warts. My right leg from the knee to the ankle was ate up with them. I'm talking about a lot. And we were poor, so we couldn't go to the doctor. My grandma brought me to the Gree man. Now, I say Gree because that is the vernacular here in Louisiana. It was a medicine man, right, whatever. He didn't practice voodoo. My father had been to him as well, and it's funny because what he did for Daddy was completely different than what he did for me, right? He made Daddy go out and collect water from a stump in the backyard. He didn't do that for me. He just run his hand down my leg, and the warts disappeared. Quite literally just fell away. All he did was touch me. He didn't rub nothing on me but his hand. And he just went, whoosh. He said, like his lips were moving. I didn't hear any words, but he was saying something, right? It could be a prayer. It could be an invocation. I don't know. But it worked. So there are absolutely people out there. And indeed, some of the things are strange or ridiculous. Like he made Daddy go get a cup full of water from a stump in the backyard to do the same thing that he did this to me for, right? Situational. Maybe he is reading something about the intention and the faith that he needs, right? Back to the text. An old merchant of our acquaintance, a man of eccentric character and exalted religious sentiment, after retiring from business, set himself to exercise gratuitously and out of Christian charity occult medicine in one of the departments of France. After retiring, set himself to exercise gratuitously and out of Christian charity occult medicine in one of the departments of France. What? That doesn't make any sense. His sole like the sentence isn't structured right. His sole specifics were oil, insufflations, and prayers. The institution of a lawsuit against him for the illegal exercise of medicine established in public knowledge that 10,000 cures had been attributed to him in the space of about 5 years, and that the number of his believers increased in proportions calculated to alarm all the doctors of the district. We also saw at Mans a poor nun who was regarded as slightly demented, but she healed nevertheless all diseases in the surrounding country by means of an elixir and plaster of her own invention. All diseases is a big word. The elixir was taken internally and the plaster was applied outwardly so that nothing escaped this universal panacea. The plaster never stuck upon the skin save at the place where its application was necessary, and it rolled up and fell off by itself. Such at least was asserted by the good sister and declared to be the case by her sufferers. This thaumaturge was also subjected to persecution, for she impoverished the practice of all doctors round about her. She was rigidly cloistered, but it was soon found necessary to produce her at least once a week, and on the day of her consultations we have seen Sister Jane Francis, surrounded by the country folk, who had arrived overnight, awaiting their turn, lying at the convent gate. They have slept upon the ground and tarried only to receive the elixir and plaster of the devoted sister. Now, I am less inclined to believe this, right? For a reason, right? If she had indeed created a universal unguent and plaster that could be used for all applications and healed everything, there is a 0% chance that she would have been able to keep it silent. I'm just saying, like, if it cures cancer, diabetes, and a lame leg, there is no way that you would not The people in charge, the people in power, would have tortured the knowledge out of her if nothing else, right? But she's a sister of God, out here healing people. There is almost a 0% chance that she would not have relayed that information, especially when she was getting close to dying, right? There's no way that she would not give you the preparation. Now, if it was a magical preparation that had nothing to do with physicality, then she could not relay that. The remedy being the same in all diseases, it would appear needless for her to be acquainted with the cases of her patients, but she listened to them invariably with great attention, and only dispensed her specific after learning the nature of the complaint. There was the magical secret. The direction of the intention imparted its special virtue to the remedy. That is energy manipulation, which was insignificant in itself. The elixir was spiced brandy mixed with the juice of bitter herbs. The plaster was a compound analogous to theriac as regards color and smell. That would be a placebo effect. It was possibly electuary bilgone pitch. But whatever the substance, it worked wonders, and the wrath of the royal folk would have been visited on those who questioned the miracles of the nun. Near Paris, also, we knew of an old gardener Thaumaturge who accomplished marvelous cures by putting in his vials the juice of all the herbs of St. John. He had, however, a skeptical brother who derided the sorcerer, and the poor gardener, overwhelmed by the sarcasms of this infidel, began to doubt himself, whereupon all the miracles ceased. St. John's wort is a thing. The sufferers lost confidence, and the Thaumaturge, slandered and despairing, died mad. The Abbé Thiers, cure of Vabre, in his curious Treatise Concerning Superstitions, records that a woman afflicted with an apparently aggravated ophthalmia, having been suddenly and mysteriously cured, confessed to a priest that she had betaken herself to magic. She had long importuned a clerk, whom she regarded as a magician, to give her a talisman that she might wear, and he had at length delivered her a scroll of parchment, advising her at the same time to wash 3 times daily in fresh water. The priest made her give up the parchment, on which were these words: Eruat diabolus oculus tuas et replit sterecorbius loca vacantia. He translated them to the good woman, who was stupefied, but all the same, she was cured. Now, I don't speak Latin. Diabolus is devil, right? Or diabolical. Oculos is eyes. Loca is location. Vacantia is not in, so maybe it was run the devil out of her eyes. Insufflation is one of the most important practices of occult medicine because it is the perfect sign of the transmission of life. To inspire as a fact means to breathe upon some person or thing, and we know already by the one doctrine of Hermes that the virtue of things has created words, and that there is an exact proportion between ideas and speech, which is the first form and verbal realization of ideas. The breath attracts or repels. Accordingly, it is warm or cold. Thank you, Jason, for giving me the key between the warm and the cold breath, right, if you are unfamiliar. Cold breath is, cold breath is fast. It's, right, it's cold. When you breathe slow, it's hot or cold breath. It was remarkably simple, but without the key. The warm breathing corresponds to positive electricity, and the cold breathing to negative electricity. I don't know that that correspondence would be correct. I would have to do some experimentation. Electrical and nervous animals fear the cold breathing, and the experiment may be made upon a cat whose familiarities are importunate. By fixedly regarding a lion or tiger and blowing in their face, they would be so stupefied as to be forced to retreat before us. Don't try that. Warm and prolonged insufflation restores the circulation of the blood. cures rheumatic and gouty pains, reestablishes the balance of the humors, and dispels lassitude. When the operator is sympathetic and good, it acts as a universal sedative. Cold insufflation soothes pains occasioned by congestions and fluidic accumulations. The two breathings must therefore be used alternately, observing the polarity of the human organism and acting in a contrary manner upon the poles, which must be treated successfully to an opposite magnetism. Thus, to cure an inflamed eye, the one which is not affected must be subjected to a warm and gentle insufflation, cold insufflation being practiced upon the suffering member at the same distance and in the same proportion. Magnetic passes have a similar effect to insufflations and are a real breathing by transpiration and radiation of the interior air, which is phosphorescent with vital light. Slow passes constitute a warm breathing which fortifies and raises the spirits. Swift passes are a cold breathing of dispersive nature, neutralizing tendencies to congestion. The warm insufflation should be performed transversely, or from below upward. The cold insufflation is more effective when directed downward from above. We breathe not only by means of mouth and nostrils. The universal porousness of our body is a true respiratory apparatus, inadequate, undoubtedly, but most useful to life and health. That is true, right? You breathe through your mouth and your nose, yes, but you also aspirate through your skin. Sweat is kind of a form of aspiration. You can also absorb through your skin. If you get a toxic substance on your skin, it will go into your bloodstream. So, yes. The extremities of the fingers, where all the nerves terminate, diffuse or attract the astral light accordingly as we will. It is not your fingers, it is the palm of your hand, which is the important part of that. We talk about that. Magnetic passes without contact are a simple and slight insufflation. Contact adds sympathetic and equilibrating impression. It is good, and even necessary, to prevent hallucinations at the early stages of somnambulism, for it is a communion of physical reality which admonishes the brain and recalls wandering imagination. It must not, however, be too prolonged when the object is merely to magnetize. Absolute and prolonged contact is useful when the design is incubation or massage, rather than magnetism properly so called. We have given some examples of incubation from the most revered book of the Christians. They all refer to the cure of apparently incurable lethargies, as we are induced to term resurrections. Massage is still largely resorted to in the East, where it is practiced with great success at the public baths. It is entirely a system of frictions, tractions, and pressures, practiced slowly along the whole length of members and muscles. The results being renewed equilibrium in the forces, a feeling of complete repose and well-being, with a sensible restoration of activity and vigor. Massage is a wonderful thing. The whole power of the occult physician is in the conscience of his will, while his whole art consists in exciting the faith of his patient. If you have faith, said the master, all things are possible to him who believes. The subject must be dominated by expression, tone, gesture. Confidence must be inspired by a fatherly manner, and cheerfulness stimulated by seasonable and sprightly conversations. Rabelais, who was a greater magician than he seemed, made pantagruelism his special panacea. He compelled his patients to laugh, and all the remedies he subsequently gave them succeeded better in consequence. This is one of those things that I can talk about, right? My very first real introduction into the occult was something like this. I was in the Navy with a fellow. I won't call his name because of personal reasons, but we were in A school together, which is just after boot camp, right? It's where you're learning your job. And he was a Wiccan. He had a whole binder full of different things, and I got to read some of it, and it was pretty cool. But what really came, we were talking, right? I was curious. I was coming from Pentecostal and Baptist background, and we were talking, and he was talking about magic, and I was like, yeah, that's some bullshit, right? And he was like, okay, watch this. And he put his hands together like this, and he sat there for a minute, and he concentrated, and then he did like this, and he threw a purple ball at me, and it hit me, and he said laugh. And when he said laugh, I did. I just uncontrollably just started laughing. This purple ball hit me, and I would laugh for like 20 or 30 minutes. Unstoppably. It was something that literally happened to me. It was what kicked me off and let me know that, yeah, there is something to this. Personally, I've never made a light bulb. I've never been able to make someone laugh in that manner. I've never really even tried that particular part. I've tried the light bulb, not the laughing part. And I haven't been able to do it, full disclosure, right? It's something that I've seen, that I believe is possible, but that I have not been able to reproduce myself. He established a magnetic sympathy between himself and them, by means of which he communicated to them his own confidence and good humor. He flattered them in his prefaces, termed them his precious, most illustrious patients, and dedicated his books to them. So we are convinced that Gargantua and Pantagruel cured more black humors, more tendencies to madness, more atribulous whims at that epoch of religious animosities and civil wars than the whole faculty of medicine could boast. Occult medicine is essentially sympathetic. Reciprocal affection, or at least real goodwill, must exist between doctor and patient. Syrups and juleps have very little inherent virtue. They are what they become through the mutual opinion of operator and subject. This is kind of true, kind of not, right? Once again, the placebo effect is a very real thing. It does actually happen. And so, in part, this is true. But once again, chemicals do things. You don't have control over that. If you make a concoction of particular plants, it will have a particular effect, whether or not you believe in it, right? You can brew nightshade and kill someone whether or not they believe that you are poisoning them. So, in part, yes, but in mostly, no. Hence, homeopathic medicine dispenses with them, and no serious inconvenience follows. That may have been true in his day, but these days we consider homeopathic medicine to be taking the traditional practice of medicine and blending it with some of the more traditional, right? And no serious inconvenience follows. Like, you're not going to get away from having to take cough syrup or Tylenol. Oil and wine, combined with salt or camphor, are sufficient for the healing of all afflictions. And for all external frictions or soothing applications. Oil and wine are the chief medicaments of the gospel tradition. That lets you know that they're probably ineffective. They form the balm of the Good Samaritan. And in the Apocalypse, when describing the last plagues, the prophet praised the avenging powers to spare these substances. That is, to leave a hope and a remedy for so many wounds. What we term extreme unction was the pure and simple practice of the Master's traditional medicine, both for the early Christians and in the mind of the Apostle St. James, who has included this precept in his epistle to the faithful of the whole world. "Is any man sick among you?" he writes. "Let him call in the priest of the church, and let them pray over him, anointing him with oil in the name of the Lord." This divine therapeutic science was lost gradually, and extreme unction came to be regarded as a religious formality, necessary as a preparation for death. At the same time, the thaumaturgic virtue of consecrated oil could not be altogether effaced from remembrance by the traditional doctrine, and it is perpetuated in the passage of the Catechism which refers to extreme unction. Faith and charity were the most signal healing powers among the early Christians. The source of most diseases is in moral disorders. We must begin by healing the soul, and then the cure of the body will follow quickly. And that is true in most cases, not in all of them. that's going to bring us to the end of these two particular chapters. Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a series of somewhat difficult topics. I understand I hold some unconventional beliefs and I have a tendency to step on toes when I relay those. It is not intentional, but it is not something I apologize for. There is good information in here. Several of the things are true. Some of the things are slightly less true, right? Some of these are assumptions that he is making. Some of these are anthropomorphications. Again, that is making. He believes in the Christian God. He believes in the Catholic God specifically, which is not necessarily the same as the Baptist God, if you dig into the details. And so he is acting in accordance with that religion. It has been obvious several times through this, and again we get the reinforcement, right? The faith healing is brought back to the Bible. Well, it's not necessarily due to the Bible. Paracelsus was doing it, but he was doing it with unguents and potions, right? He was doing alchemy, creating rudimental medicines and dispensing them to people. Whether, like, quite literally, when they created the Doctrine of Natural Sciences, right, it was taking Paracelsus's works and putting it in a more scientific manner, and then from that we got chemistry, right? It was from those works that we developed the objective science that we use today to create the panacea of medicines that we have. Now, we have problems with our current medical system. We have severe problems with our medicines. If you don't believe that, listen to an ad, right? They are selling you something for erectile dysfunction that will make you shit your guts out. That seems like it may be counterproductive, right? What good's an erection going to do you if you were shitting on them, right? There are unintended consequences to pretty much all of the medicines that we refine, and therefore it lies a great problem. Several of the things that we use to cure this one thing create another problem. My dad is on like 15 different medicines. Several of them are just counteracting the side effects of other medicines. The less that you need to intake any of these substances, the better you are. So you should be doing the things that you know are correct already, right? You should be eating responsibly. That doesn't mean that you cannot treat yourself with sugar, but sugar should not be a major staple in your diet. You shouldn't be over-consuming fats, but fats should definitely be a part of your diet. You should be eating well. You should be eating healthy. You know the choices. If it comes in a box pre-made, it's probably not good for you. If it is close to source, it probably is. If you pick up meat in a package to cook yourself, that is better than getting frozen meat. There are less chemicals in it. It has less things that can harm you. The closer to source you can get, the better off you are. You will be healthier from that. You should be engaging in exercise so that you can function to the best of your ability. You should be pushing yourself farther than you think you can go. Not to the point of exhaustion, right? But pretty damn close. Every single day. Your body is a labor machine. It is meant to work. It is meant to lift and do and run and jump and all of the things. Our entire existence has been dependent upon physical, not perfection, but at least the striving for, right? You should be doing that. That is the best way to not get any of these diseases. If you are exercising regularly and eating healthily, you have beat most of the problems afflicting our country today, our world today. You should have a faith practice whereby you balance yourself between the virtues and the vices. Finding that balance is intrinsically important to your health. If you are misbalanced, you will develop some kind of malignity there. If you're misbalanced in these sexual organs, you're probably going to get prostate cancer. If you're misbalanced in your heart chakra, you're probably going to get heart disease. If you're misbalanced in your third eye, you're probably going to get some Alzheimer's, right? Now, that is not to put those specific things in those specific places arbitrarily, right? It is entirely logical that that would be the natural result of those particular places, but I am not attributing specifically these things to those things. but there is probably some correspondence. You should be endeavoring to be the best you that you can possibly be. Sometimes we are limited by outside factors. I can't run right now, I've got a broken leg. But when my leg is healed, you can bet your ass I'm going to be running again. I'm about to start walking again. I just cut my grass. I should not have been cutting my grass, right? I turned off my camera so my wife couldn't watch me because she would have hollered at me. It has not been 3 months since I severely was fractured, right? My tibular plateau sunk that far, right? They had to reconstruct that and put a metal plate up there to hold it in place so it could heal. But it doesn't hurt. Right? There's a little bit of pain. Most of it's soreness. Most of it needs activity to get rid of it. You should be endeavoring to do as much as you possibly can. Push them boundaries, right? Not to the point where you hurt yourself. Not to the point of overexertion. But almost right up to the point where exhaustion is hitting you every single day. Now, that's hard to do if you're working outside in the heat. I am fully aware of that. I did that most of my life. And so I know it can be a little bit difficult. You still need to do something, right? Whether that is just doing some squat thrust in your house before you take a shower after supper, going for a walk, a half-mile walk will do wonders for your body. And that's not hurting you. That is not pushing hard. But it will do wonders for your body. It will completely change your mindset. It's a natural activity. You're not doing it because of your job. You're doing it because of your health. And that makes a difference. Endeavor to be the best that you can be. And you will avoid most of these problems. If you like what I'm doing over here, let me know down below. Give me a like, a share, a follow, throw me a comment if you agree or disagree with anything that was stated. Put it in the box down below. And if it remains respectful, it gets to remain up. If there is another work you would like to see me discuss or read aloud in the manner we are doing here, drop that in the box as well. If you really like what I'm doing over here, hit me with that super thanks. Consider joining for a membership or picking up a copy of my book where I teach you to do magic responsibly. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete, just the way that you are. And this has been Pitt's Take. Peace.